So there's a recent report from the New York Times. It's getting a little bit of buzz. Apparently, it's about Donald Trump and the Mueller investigation, and it turns out it shows that the president had already attempted to fire special counsel Robert Mueller. Now that's interesting because I've talked about this a lot. I've talked about how, hey man, look, if he fires Mueller, which it seems like he's been wanting to do, he's been very critical of Robert Mueller. I guess understandably because Robert Mueller is investigating him. But fire him, well, you hear a lot from Trump lawyers that would have been a terrible idea. Turns out, one of the Trump lawyers thought it was such a bad idea that he had threatened to quit. So let me get to the details here. Now, according to 4 people told of the matter back in June, Trump, tired of the investigation into Russia, decided, you know what? I'm going to get rid of Mueller. I'm going to get rid of him. I'm going to get rid of him. Well, why are you going to get rid of him? Because I don't like being investigated. That's why. Well, look, I'm going to point out why that would be a terrible idea and why this could end up being a way to convince Mueller that there is huge, let me figure out how to put this, right? Obstruction of justice charges. Okay, anyway. Now, one of the things that we find out also from this report, other than the fact that, of course, Trump had attempted to fire Mueller, or definitely had intended to, we also find out that Mueller had known about this for the last several months. In fact, they write that he learned about the episode in recent months as his investigators interviewed current and former senior White House officials in his inquiry into whether or not the president had obstructed justice. No, look, in my opinion, and this is my opinion here, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe that the FBI would have a really good case of obstruction. I mean, consider the firing of James Comey, which started this whole thing. If he hadn't fired Comey, well, then Rod Rosenstein wouldn't have appointed Mueller. And then, of course, you had Jeff Sessions that recused himself because of his own issues with talking to Russian diplomats and things like that. So, look, all that stuff feeds into the idea that Trump, again, he hates when people investigate him, and he decided, I want to shut this down. I don't care how it looks. I want to shut it down. Now, Comey, again, Comey was fired, right? He was fired because he wasn't sufficiently loyal to the president. So, and of course, Donald Trump, in an NBC interview in front of everybody, right, in front of the cameras, got it on tape, all that stuff. He's like, yeah, I fired Comey because of the Russia stuff. Oh, that looks bad. Now, you also have his anger at Sessions' recusal because he believed that Sessions was supposed to protect him from the Mueller investigation. According to the New York Times, back in March, 2 months before Donald Trump decided to fire Comey, he ordered White House counsel Don McGahn to stop Sessions from recusing himself. Now, McGahn, of course, was unsuccessful, and after that, Trump reportedly erupted in anger, saying that he needed Sessions to protect him and safeguard him. He actually thought that was the whole point of the Attorney General, is to protect the president. Well, that's not the job of the Attorney General. He's actually supposed to go after crimes, right? But the better question here, though, is if he thought that Jeff Sessions was there to safeguard him and protect him, what does he need protecting from? The investigation? I don't know. Now, after Comey was fired and replaced by Andrew McCabe, Trump then asked McCabe who he voted for. Now, of course, there are people that would defend that, like, hey, look, well, it's just an innocent question. I mean, asking who you're voting for and things like that. But with Trump, you know it's about loyalty, and Trump values loyalty above all other things. And, of course, if you were loyal to him, if you voted for him during the election, then he's more likely to trust you. If you voted for somebody else, you know, his opponent, namely Hillary Clinton, then, of course, you're immediately the enemy. Okay. Now, he also complained later on to staffers that McCabe was a Democrat, so he wanted to get rid of Andrew McCabe. So later on, he pushed Jeff Sessions to pressure Christopher Wray to fire McCabe, which, of course, caused Wray to threaten to resign, according to Axios. So there's this big old timeline of what's going on. So now, fast forward to August, right? According to Politico, Trump called Senator Tom Tillis and told him that he was unhappy with the legislation he was working on with Chris Coons. Now, what was that legislation? That was legislation to protect Mueller from any attempt for Donald Trump to fire him. Now, of course, later on, the Senate's like, no, we're not going to take up this legislation. You had Mitch McConnell out there saying, well, why does Mueller need protection? Well, now we find out this is why Mueller needed protection. Donald Trump sees Robert Mueller as a threat. Now, I'm kind of curious as to why, right? Look, if you've done nothing wrong, as Donald Trump claims, right? Well, then why would you fight the investigation? Why would you get so agitated that you would attempt to fire the special counsel? So now, Trump, of course, had enough wherewithal, right, to realize that the firing of the special counsel without a reason would actually be a terrible mistake. So now they've come up with reasons, right, justifications that they were planning on using and actually still could, right? Now, according to the Times, first he claimed that a dispute years ago over fees at Trump National Golf Club in Sterling, Virginia, had prompted Mueller to resign his membership. So think about that, right? So he once had a conflict with golf fees. So that would be enough to have Mueller, years later, somehow get appointed. This is where this conspiracy comes into play, right? So Mueller, all this time, planned his revenge against Donald Trump. Somehow got himself put in charge of an investigation into Donald Trump over golf fees? Golf fees. Come on. All right, there's more. President also said Mueller could not be impartial because he had most recently worked for a law firm that represented the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. I'm not even sure how this is an argument against Mueller. He worked at a law firm that represented Kushner and? What? What does that mean? Now, finally, the president said that Mr. Mueller had been interviewed to return as the FBI director the day before he was appointed special counsel in May. And somehow that is proof of some big conspiracy against the president. Maybe he wanted to hire back into the FBI because, hey, there's suddenly an opening in the FBI because Donald Trump fired James Comey. Hey, look, I can have my old job back. Great, wonderful. Let me jump back in. So, look, those are the Mueller conflicts of interest. Take them how you will. I think they're weak sauce, but that's just me. But that would be the justification for his firing. Now, his counsel, Don McGahn, disagreed. He said after receiving the president's order to fire Mueller, the White House counsel, Donald McGahn, refused to ask the Justice Department to dismiss the special counsel, saying that he would quit instead. So that, look, that says a lot. McGahn would rather quit than follow Donald Trump's stupid order to go and fire Mueller. Like, no, I'm not going to do it. If you plan on firing Mueller, then I'm not going to do it for you because that's going to get us in deep shit. That is the only reason that I could see that he decided not to go through with his orders. Now, McGahn disagreed with the president's case and told senior White House officials that firing Mueller would have a catastrophic effect on Mr. Trump's presidency, which of course is 100% true. So here's the thing, right? It doesn't take a genius to figure out that after firing the head of the FBI over the Russia thing, which he admitted on national television, then firing the special counsel investigating the same thing would look horribly bad, whether or not you did it. It still looks terrible. Just consider the optics of it, right? But of course, I guess it's a good thing that we're dealing with a very stable genius. So, weirdly enough, Don McGahn is actually the reason that Mueller is still there, and that Trump isn't even in bigger trouble. Now, back at the time, Trump's personal lawyer was Mark Kasowitz, right? Now, Kasowitz didn't want to play ball with Mueller. Kasowitz was replaced with Ty Cobb. Now, Ty Cobb, of course, he's the guy with the goofy-looking mustache, but he's been telling Trump, for the love of God, don't fire Mueller. Just play along. He's almost done with the investigation. He's not going to find anything wrong because you didn't do anything wrong, right? You know you didn't do anything wrong, so hold your fire. Hold your fire. Like, don't go after Mueller. Don't attack Mueller. Let him do his investigation, and he will come out, looking like the bad guy, right? Because he won't find anything on you, and you'll be fine, and then the shadow will be lifted from your administration. That's Ty Cobb, right? So he's been following Ty Cobb's advice for a while now because he's been convinced that the investigation is going to end very, very soon. But for how much longer is my question, right? And here comes a really telling part of the article. It said that Mr. Trump has wavered for months about whether he wants to fire Mueller, which is an omnipresent concern among the president's legal team and close aides. So they're worried that Trump is going to make an irrational move because they know it's at stake. Now, look, they also know that at the time, he knew he was under investigation for obstruction of justice. So when he thought about, like, he's sitting here thinking about firing Mueller when he knows he's already under investigation for obstruction of justice, which would be and the intent to obstruct justice. Still wanting to fire him again. Look, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that that was his intent, to obstruct justice, because for whatever reason, he does not want this investigation to go forward. He desperately wants to stop it. So, again, this is an example of him, in my opinion, looking incredibly guilty based on what we know already. And look, Mueller knows more, right? And in the end, maybe he did obstruction of justice, maybe he didn't. Maybe they'll come up with that determination. We have to wait for that to happen. So, look, I don't have all the facts now. Only, I guess, Mueller and the investigation, that team has all the facts. But from what I can see right now, this seems like he definitely had the intent, in my opinion, and I can't stress that enough, that he wanted to obstruct justice. Again, I don't know if it's because he made a deal with the Russians. I don't know. Or maybe it's because he just doesn't want people finding out how rich he is. I don't know. Or maybe he's super, super paranoid and thinks that they're using whatever they can to try to bring him down. Paranoia doesn't necessarily have to mean that he's mentally ill to be super, super paranoid as well, and doesn't want people looking into his private life. The problem is that he keeps inviting it through his actions. He is acting like a guilty person. And so, look, when you act guilty, it makes people think that maybe you're guilty. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.